Up to this point, the first knowledge lecture has given us 3 layers of the magical language. The elements tell us the fundamental qualities of force. The zodiac tells us the different ways those elemental forces operate. The planets give us distinct powers acting through those conditions. And then the lecture changes direction. It introduces an alphabet, 22 Hebrew letters. At first, it can feel like, whoa, the Golden Dawn curriculum is becoming way too academic. You wanted to learn magic, now apparently you're learning Hebrew. And this is where a lot of students quietly decide that the letters are something they can come back to later. So they memorize a few divine names phonetically. They learn where to vibrate them. They recognize some of the more common words. And then they continue performing the rituals without ever becoming fluent in the alphabet underneath them. That works, to a point, but it leaves an entire layer of the system closed. Because within the Golden Dawn, Hebrew is more than a foreign language appearing inside the rituals. The letters themselves are part of the magical technology. The first knowledge lecture says something very specific. Each letter represents a number. Each letter also has a meaning. 5 letters possess a different form when they appear at the end of a word. Hebrew is written from right to left. And then the lecture makes the most important statement in the entire section. Hebrew letters are holy symbols. They should be carefully drawn and square. Stop there, because that sentence tells us how the order expects the student to approach the alphabet, as symbols. And if you remember what we established in part 1, a symbol in ceremonial magic is compressed information. The visible form may be simple, but the network of relationships behind it can be enormous. This is exactly what happens with Hebrew. A single letter can possess a written form, a sound, a name, a numerical value, a literal meaning, and later an elemental, planetary, or zodiacal attribution. A position on the tree of life, a tarot correspondence, a relationship to divine names, a relationship to other words through number. What appears to be a letter becomes a node inside the entire symbolic system. And once you understand this, it becomes obvious why the Golden Dawn makes you learn the alphabet so early. You're not being asked to become a Hebrew scholar. Rigardi addresses this directly. The neophyte does not need to master Hebrew grammar. The requirement is much more specific. Learn the alphabet. Learn the proper shapes. Learn the meanings. Learn the numerical values. And learn how the important divine and Kabbalistic names are actually spelled. That is manageable, but it is also non-negotiable if you want the deeper structure of the system to become visible. Because right now, you may hear a divine name like Yod-He Vav-He and experience it primarily as a sound. 4 syllables, a vibration, a name used during ritual. But when you know Hebrew, something changes. You can see it. Yod-He Vav-He. The name acquires structure. And once it acquires structure, you can begin examining the structure itself. The letters have values. Yod is 10, He is 5, Vav is 6, He is 5. 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5, 26. Now the divine name is simultaneously a sound, a written formula, a sequence of 4 symbolic letters, and the number 26. That is the beginning of Kabbalistic thinking. The word does not only mean something, the word is constructed from components. And every component creates relationships. This is why learning the alphabet changes the way you perform ritual. You stop hearing names as strings of unfamiliar sounds. You begin perceiving formulas. And there is a profound difference between repeating a formula and recognizing what you're actually saying. Think about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. At the beginning, you perform the Kabbalistic cross. Ate, Malkut, Vegabura, Vegadula, Leolam, Amen. Then the pentagrams are traced. Divine names are vibrated. Yod, He, Vav, Yahweh Adonai Ehyeh Agalah. The ritual is saturated in Hebrew and Kabbalistic language. Regardie tells the student to learn Hebrew and the divine names before practical invocation. And the LBRP instructions that follow the first knowledge lecture immediately use those names. The ritual assumes that eventually the operator will understand more than the phonetic sound. But do not misunderstand what I'm saying here. You do not need to master all of this material before you begin practicing the rituals. In fact, I would argue that you should not wait. At the beginning, pronunciation is enough to get moving. The intellectual study and the ritual practice are meant to develop together. You learn a divine name intellectually, and then you vibrate it hundreds of times in ritual. You learn that an element corresponds to a direction, a color, a divine name, an archangel, and a particular set of qualities. Then you repeatedly encounter those correspondences inside an actual ritual experience. That is when the knowledge begins to stick. And more importantly, practice gradually reveals something that intellectual study alone cannot give you. There's a difference between knowing that fire corresponds to certain ideas on a page and beginning to recognize the actual quality of fire within consciousness. There's a difference between memorizing a divine name and feeling what happens when the name has become inseparable from a particular gesture, direction, image, and state of mind. The rituals transform abstract correspondences into lived experience. They are where we go from seeing the notes on the page to actually hearing and feeling the music. So study the system, absolutely. Learn the Hebrew, learn the correspondences, learn the tree of life. But do not imagine that you must finish learning before you are qualified to begin practicing. The practice itself is part of how you learn. And then the system is designed to deepen. You hear the name, then you learn the letters, then you learn the numbers, then you learn where the name belongs on the tree, then you learn the force represented by that position. Then another correspondence appears, then another. And because you've been working with that name in ritual all along, every new piece of knowledge attaches itself to something you've already experienced. The name becomes denser, and because the name becomes denser, vibrating it means more. The sound hasn't changed. The consciousness behind the sound has. This is one of the central principles of magical training. The same ritual performed by two people is not necessarily the same operation. The external movement may be identical, the words may be identical, the timing may be identical, but one operator may have 10 associations activated by a symbol, while another has one. One sees a letter, another sees a sound, number, path, element, image, divine relationship, and position inside an entire symbolic architecture simultaneously. The physical ritual is the same. The interior ritual is not. This is why study matters. Knowledge increases the number of dimensions through which the ritual can operate, and Hebrew is one of the major gateways into those dimensions. So let us actually learn the alphabet. There are 22 letters, and unlike English, Hebrew is written from right to left. The first letter is Aleph. Aleph. Its numerical value is 1. The Golden Dawn table gives its meaning as ox. That can seem strangely mundane. The first letter of a sacred alphabet is an ox. But don't dismiss the literal meanings because they sound primitive. The literal image gives the imagination something concrete to hold. An ox suggests strength, potential force, power capable of carrying weight. At this stage, though, don't overload the image. The lecture specifically asks us to know Aleph, 1, ox. That's the foundation. Later, the correspondences will expand. For now, learn the seed. The second letter is Bet. Bet, value 2, meaning house. The image changes immediately. Aleph gives us an animal force. Bet gives us a structure. A house contains. It creates an inside and an outside. It shelters something. Again, the temptation is to begin building an entire metaphysical doctrine from the image. Resist that for now. First, establish the exact correspondence. Bet to house. The third letter is Gimel. Gimel, value 3, meaning camel. A camel travels. It crosses distance. It carries something from one location to another. Already you can feel how evocative these old letter names can be when contemplated. But the training begins with accuracy. Gimel, 3, camel. The fourth letter is Daleth. Daleth, value 4, meaning door. And this is where you begin seeing why the literal meanings become so useful to the magical imagination. A door is not merely a physical object. It's a threshold. It defines passage between conditions. Open, closed, inside, outside, before, after. Again, that deeper contemplation belongs to the student, but it has to begin with the exact symbol. Daleth, 4, door. The fifth letter is Hey. Hey, value 5, meaning window. A window creates perception through a boundary. You remain inside one space while seeing into another. The image alone is already suggestive, but learn the foundation first. Hey, 5, window. The sixth letter is Vav. You may also see this letter written V-A-V in modern Hebrew contexts. In older Hebrew scholarship, you may encounter W-A-W, while the traditional Golden Dawn material generally renders the letter as V-A-U. It's pronounced Vav. Think of the U like a soft V. In the MageSpace Golden Dawn Magic course, I have it spelled V-A-V just to make it simpler for everyone. Vav, value 6, meaning pin or hook. Something that joins, something that connects one thing to another. Vav 6, pin or hook. The seventh letter is Zayin. Zayin, value 7, meaning sword or armor. A sword divides, armor protects. The same letter name carries an image of both offensive and defensive force. Zayin, 7, sword or armor. The eighth letter is Ket. Ket, value 8, meaning fence or enclosure. Again, a boundary, something contained, something protected by a defined perimeter. Ket, 8, fence or enclosure. The ninth letter is Tet. Tet, value 9, meaning snake. One of the oldest and most symbolically overloaded images human beings possess. But once again, do not begin with every possible interpretation of the serpent. Begin with the correspondence the lecture actually gives you. Tet, 9, snake. The 10th letter is Yod. Yod, value 10, meaning hand. And Yod is visually tiny, one of the smallest Hebrew letters. Yet it begins Yod-He Vav-He, the divine name you have already vibrated repeatedly if you're working with the lesser ritual of the pentagram. Yod, 10, hand. The 11th letter is Kaf. Kaf, value 20, meaning fist. And Kaf introduces something new, because Kaf is one of the 5 letters that changes shape when it appears at the end of a word. Ordinary Kaf, final Kaf. The Golden Dawn table also assigns the final form a special numerical value of 500. So now the alphabet is showing us that position matters. A letter can have one form inside a word and another when it completes the word. Kaf, 20. Final kaf, 500 in the numerical scheme given by the lecture, meaning fist. The 12th letter is lamed. Lamed, value 30, meaning ox goad, a tool used to direct an animal. Not the force of the ox itself, but the instrument that gives the force direction. Lamed, 30, ox goad. The 13th letter is mem. Mem, value 40, meaning water. And mem also has a final form. Ordinary mem, final mem. The final value given in the Golden Dawn table is 600. The knowledge lecture draws special attention to final mem because unlike the other 4 final letters which extend below the line, final mem becomes a closed oblong form. That difference matters visually. Open mem, closed mem. The same letter appearing differently according to position. Mem, 40, water. Final mem, 600. The 14th letter is noon. Noon, value 50, meaning fish. Its final form is... Final noon extends downward. The final value given in the lecture is 700. Noon, 50, fish. Final noon, 700. The 15th letter is samek. Samek, value 60, meaning prop, a support, something that holds another structure in position. Samek, 60, prop. The 16th letter is ayin. Ayin, value 70, meaning eye. Sight, perception, the organ through which visible form enters consciousness. Ayin, 70, eye. The 17th letter is pei. Pei, value 80, meaning mouth. And again we encounter a final form. Ordinary pei, final pei. The Golden Dawn table gives the final value as 800. Pei, 80, mouth. Final pei, 800. The 18th letter is tsari. Tsari, value 90, meaning fishhook. Its final form is final tsari. The lecture gives the final value as 900. Tsari, 90, fishhook. Final tsari, 900. Those 5 finals should now be committed to memory. Kaf, mem, noon, pei, tsari. Kaf, mem, noon, pei, tsari. 5 letters whose form changes at the end of a word. The Golden Dawn table assigns their finals the value 500, 600, 700, 800, and 900, respectively. Then we continue. The 19th letter is kof. Kof, value 100. The Golden Dawn table gives the meaning ear or back of the head. Kof, 100. Ear or back of the head. The 20th letter is resh. Resh, value 200, meaning head. Resh, 200, head. The 21st letter is sheen. Sheen, value 300, meaning tooth. Sheen, 300, tooth. And finally, the 22nd letter, tav, often rendered T-A-V in modern Hebrew. The Golden Dawn table uses T-A-U. Pronounce it with a soft V. Value 400, meaning cross. Tav, 400, cross. Now look at what just happened. You learned 22 letters, but you also learned a numerical system, 1 through 10, then 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400. The alphabet is also a sequence of numbers. This is where Hebrew begins doing something English does not normally do for us. The letter and the number occupy the same symbolic position. A word is therefore also capable of being read numerically, and that opens one of the fundamental techniques of Qabalah. Gematria. The principle is simple. Each letter has a value. A word is composed of letters. Therefore, the values of the letters can be added together to produce the numerical value of the word. We already did this with Yod He Vav He. 10, 5, 6, 5, total 26. It's not as if 26 is somehow secretly hiding inside an English translation of the name. The significance is that in Hebrew, the letters themselves generate that number. The spelling and the number are inseparable within the system. Now imagine that another Hebrew word also totals 26. The Kabbalist notices the equality. The question becomes, why do these two apparently different ideas occupy the same numerical field? Is there a meaningful relationship? Is there a symbolic bridge between them? Can one illuminate the other? That is Gematria at its most basic. And this is where you have to understand the difference between disciplined Qabalah and numerological free association. If you're determined enough, numbers can be manipulated until almost anything appears related to anything else. That proves very little. The value comes from repeated, coherent relationships inside an established symbolic system. The number becomes a clue, not automatic proof. A correspondence invites investigation. It does not eliminate judgment. This principle is essential because the deeper you move into Qabalah, the easier it becomes to be hypnotized by coincidence. You find a numerical match. It feels significant. Then another. Then another. Eventually, every event in your life appears encoded specifically for you. That is not necessarily illumination. Sometimes it's what happens when a pattern-detecting mind is given unlimited material and no discipline. The Golden Dawn gives you structure precisely so that symbolic thinking doesn't collapse into uncontrolled association. The alphabet is fixed. The values are fixed. The divine names are fixed. The Sephiroth occupy defined positions. The paths have defined relationships. The framework gives the interpretation resistance. You don't get to change every attribution because another arrangement produces a more exciting conclusion. The discipline of the system is what makes discovery meaningful. And this is why memorization comes before interpretation. You cannot recognize an unusual relationship until the ordinary relationships are stable. First, learn what is there. Then explore what it implies. And if you want to actually begin practicing this system and move beyond learning about it intellectually, that is exactly why I created the MageSpace Golden Dawn Magic course. I have taken these rituals and turned them into guided video practices. So you can begin working with them now, even while your understanding of the deeper symbolism is still developing. Because remember, you don't need to understand every correspondence before you begin. The ritual itself is part of the education. So if you want to move from studying the notes to actually hearing the music, you can find the MageSpace Golden Dawn Magic course linked below. There is another issue we must clarify before moving deeper. Pronunciation. Because anyone studying Golden Dawn material for long enough will eventually discover that Hebrew words appear to be pronounced differently by different teachers. You may hear vow, vav, tau, tav. Sephiroth pronounced in more than one way. Divine names spoken differently. And at some point, the student wonders which one is correct. Regardie anticipated this problem. In his note following the alphabet, he distinguishes between Ashkenazic and Sephardic pronunciation and states that the order teaching employs the Sephardic pronunciation. He also explains that some of his own earlier works used Ashkenazic forms, which is why students may encounter inconsistencies between Golden Dawn-related books. This is worth understanding because magical students sometimes turn pronunciation differences into a theological crisis. Language does not work that way. Living languages develop dialects, pronunciation changes, communities preserve different traditions. The practical rule for the Golden Dawn student is consistency. Know which system you're working. Know how the source text renders the name. Know enough to understand when two apparently different spellings are actually attempts to transliterate the same Hebrew letters. Because English transliteration is not the Hebrew itself. This is extremely important. The English letters are approximations. The Hebrew spelling is the structure. If one book writes a word slightly differently from another, you should eventually be able to look underneath the transliteration and ask, what Hebrew letters are actually present? That is the stable layer. This is one of the reasons learning the alphabet immediately reduces confusion. The transliteration stops being the authority. It becomes a tool for reading the original symbolic form. The knowledge lecture also makes a statement about the pointing used to indicate pronunciation. Its terminology is somewhat loose by modern Hebrew grammatical standards. The essential point for the Golden Dawn student is that the alphabet is being presented primarily in its consonantal form, without the full system of vowel points. Hebrew commonly uses additional marks around letters to indicate vowels, while a dagesh is specifically a dot that can affect the pronunciation or doubling of particular consonants. You do not need to become an expert in that system for the first knowledge lecture. Again, do not turn a manageable requirement into an excuse not to begin. The order isn't asking you to become a professor of Semitic linguistics. It's asking you to recognize and correctly draw 22 symbols. Know their names. Know their numerical values. Know their basic meanings. Know the 5 finals. And begin recognizing important Kabbalistic words in their actual form. That is enough to transform your relationship to the rituals. Because something very different happens when you stop seeing Hebrew as decorative script. Take Malkut. You have said this word in the Kabbalistic cross. Malkut, the kingdom. But eventually you see, now the word has architecture. Mem, Lamed, Kaf, Vav, Tav. And because Hebrew is written from right to left, the orientation of the word itself requires you to alter the way your attention moves. You can calculate the letters. 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. The word totals 496 using those ordinary values. More importantly for the beginner, the word has stopped being an opaque sound. You can recognize the components. You can write them. You can look at the word and know, this is Malkut. The word is becoming yours. Not because you're playing around in fantasy land and inventing new interpretations, because you developed enough literacy to enter the system on its own terms. That distinction matters. Esoteric training should not only make strange things feel familiar, it should make you capable of perceiving them with greater precision. Hebrew gives you precision. And that precision becomes critical when you begin working with divine names, because a divine name is not interchangeable with another divine name. The spelling matters, the sequence matters, the letters matter. You are doing more than producing a mystical sound and hoping the universe understands the greater intention. You're using a formula that belongs to a defined place inside the system. This is one of the reasons the Golden Dawn emphasizes exact orthography for important divine and angelic names. Imagine performing a complicated piece of music. You would not say, well, the exact notes do not matter. My intention is musical. Intention matters, but intention does not replace structure. The structure gives intention a vehicle. The same is true in ceremonial magic. A divine name is a structured, symbolic object. The letters define it. The pronunciation activates it through sound. The visualization gives it interior form. The correspondence places it inside the larger magical architecture. The vibration directs attention and breath through it. Each layer adds something. This is why vibration becomes more powerful as knowledge deepens. At the beginning, you may vibrate Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, because the instructions tell you to. Later, you know the 4 letters. You can visualize them. You know their numerical total. You know that the name occupies a specific Kabbalistic role. You know where it's being used in the ritual. You know the elemental quarter being addressed. You know what the pentagram means. You know what the surrounding angelic names mean. The name is no longer floating independently. It's been connected, and connection produces depth. This is the pattern we have been watching through the entire knowledge lecture. Nothing remains isolated. Fire connects to Aries. Aries connects to Mars. Mars will connect to Hebrew letters and paths. Hebrew letters connect to numbers. Numbers connect to Sephiroth. The Sephiroth connect to divine names. The divine names appear inside rituals. The rituals place all of those correspondences into motion inside the operator. The system continually folds back into itself. This is why Qabalah becomes such an effective organizing structure for Golden Dawn magic. It allows enormous amounts of information to become interconnected. Instead of memorizing thousands of independent facts, you begin learning a network. And networks become easier to remember precisely because one thing calls up another. The letter evokes the number. The number evokes the correspondence. The correspondence evokes the path. The path evokes the tarot image. The image evokes the astrological force. The astrological force evokes the ritual relationship. One symbol begins opening multiple doors. But there is a danger here. The danger is mistaking symbolic complexity for magical attainment. You can become extremely knowledgeable about Qabalah and remain completely unchanged. You can calculate Gematria for hours, memorize every path, argue over transliterations, correct everyone else's Hebrew, build enormous correspondence tables, and never establish control over your own attention. Never maintain a ritual practice. Never confront your own unconscious patterns. Never become more balanced. Never become more honest. Never become more capable of holding force. That is not initiation. It's scholarship. Scholarship is valuable, but it becomes magical training only when knowledge is brought into operation. The alphabet is meant to change what your consciousness can perceive and manipulate inside ritual. That is the test. Does learning Hebrew alter the way you perform the Kabbalistic cross? Does it change the way you hear Malkut? Does seeing the letters of a divine name strengthen visualization? Does knowing the spelling reduce uncertainty? Does the number reveal relationships that deepen contemplation? Does the symbol become more alive after repeated use? If nothing changes except the amount of trivia you can recite, you have accumulated information. You have not yet made it operational. This brings us back to the statement. Hebrew letters are holy symbols. They should be carefully drawn and square. Regardie later emphasizes this point even more strongly, saying the student should learn to form the letters correctly, because the Golden Dawn treats them explicitly as magical symbols. There is a practical exercise hidden in that instruction. Go beyond the flashcards. Write them by hand. slowly. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daleth, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ket, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Tsadi, Kof, Resh, Shin, Tav. Then the finals. Kaf, final. Mem, final. Nun, final. Pei, final. Tsadi, final. Draw them until the hand knows them. There is something important about this. Recognition and production are different capacities. You may look at Aleph and know it immediately. That does not mean you can close the book and reproduce Aleph accurately. When you write the letter from memory, gaps in knowledge become visible. That is useful. So train both. Look at the letter, name it, give its value, give its meaning, then cover the page, draw it. Then reverse the exercise. Hear the name, produce the symbol, hear the value, recall the letter, see the symbol, recall the meaning. Build multiple paths of access. The goal is more than recognition, the goal is fluency. Eventually, when you see, you do not calculate consciously sheen, 300, tooth. The associations arrive together. When you see mem, 40, water. When you see Daleth, 4, door. That speed matters because later magical work does not give you unlimited time to reconstruct the alphabet intellectually. The symbols have to become immediate. Imagine entering a path working and encountering a Hebrew letter. If you have to leave the visionary state mentally, search through a memorized list, count through the alphabet, and finally decide that the symbol might have been Samek, the current has already been interrupted. Fluency allows the symbol to register immediately. Samek, 60, prop, and later Sagittarius, the corresponding tarot trump, the appropriate path. The web activates. This is what the knowledge lectures are preparing. They are front-loading the symbolic vocabulary so that later experience can occur without constant intellectual interruption. This is also why you should resist the temptation to skip directly into advanced correspondences before the basic alphabet is stable. More information isn't always more understanding. If I give you 15 associations for Aleph before you can reliably distinguish Aleph from Tsadi, I have not helped you. I have increased cognitive noise. The Golden Dawn sequence is intelligent. Letter, name, value, meaning, then later, classification, element, planet, zodiac, path, tarot, color, divine relationship. Build from the center outward. The symbol needs a stable identity before it can carry an expanding network. This is the same reason you learned fire as heat and dryness before we began talking about all of its psychological implications. Foundation first, expansion second. The deeper implication of the Hebrew alphabet is not that Hebrew is somehow the only language capable of sacred meaning. That would be too simple. The point is, the Golden Dawn inherited a Kabbalistic system in which Hebrew had already been developed for centuries as a matrix of letters, numbers, sacred names, textual interpretation, and mystical speculation. The order didn't need to invent a symbolic alphabet from nothing. It inherited one, and then it connected that alphabet to the rest of its hermetic structure. That connection is where the extraordinary density comes from. 22 letters, 22 paths, 12 zodiacal signs, 7 traditional planets, 3 primary elemental letters in the later Kabbalistic classification. 3, 7, 12, 22. You're beginning to see the architecture. The Hebrew alphabet is going to absorb the astrological material. The planets we learned in Part 4 will be assigned to letters. The zodiacal signs from Part 3 will be assigned to letters. The elements from Part 2 will be assigned to letters. Those letters will be placed on paths connecting the Sephiroth. The entire symbolic system begins converging on the Tree of Life. That's where we're going next. But before we get there, there's a magical principle here worth sitting with. A name creates distinction. Before something is named, experience may be vague. You feel something, you sense a movement, you recognize that the ritual has changed, but you cannot identify the quality. Then the symbolic vocabulary develops. Fire, water, Mars, Saturn, Aleph, Mem, Gabura, Yesod. The experience becomes classifiable. And once something can be distinguished, it can be worked with more consciously. Name gives consciousness a handle, a point of contact, a way to separate one pattern from another. Language increases resolution. This is true outside of magic. A musician hears distinctions in sound that an untrained listener misses. A physician sees meaningful differences in symptoms that appear identical to someone without medical training. A mathematician looks at a structure and recognizes relationships invisible to the beginner. The world didn't change, the perceiver changed. Training increased resolution. The Hebrew alphabet increases symbolic resolution. You begin seeing structures where previously you heard only mysterious names. And the moment you see structure, you can begin asking better questions. Why these letters? Why this order? Why this number? Why is this divine name located here? Why does another word share its value? Why does this letter correspond to this path? Why does the path connect these two Sephiroth? Why does the tarot image associated with it reproduce the same symbolic tension? Now you are inside the system. You're no longer looking at occult symbolism from the outside. You are thinking through its internal relationships. That is what the knowledge lecture is actually trying to produce. A change in how the mind organizes symbolic information. So here's the work for this section. Don't try to learn all 22 letters in one sitting. Break them into groups. First, Aleph through Yod, 1 through 10. Then Kaf through Tsadi, 20 through 90. Then Kof through Tav, 100 through 400. Then learn the 5 finals separately. Kaf final 500, Mem final 600, Nun final 700, Pei final 800, Tsadi final 900. Write each letter, say its name, say its number, say its meaning. And when you perform your ritual practice, start noticing the Hebrew already present. Do not change the ritual. Do not make it more complicated. Simply increase awareness. When you say Malkut, know that it is a Hebrew word. When you vibrate a divine name, visualize the letters if you know them. When you encounter a Sephirah, look at its Hebrew spelling. When a word appears repeatedly, write it. Become familiar with its shape. Let the alphabet migrate from the textbook into practice. This is how symbolic fluency develops. Slowly, repeatedly, until one day you encounter a Hebrew name and realize you're no longer staring at a wall of foreign characters. You can see individual letters. You know some of their values. You recognize part of the structure. The wall has become a door. And would you look at that, one of the first letters you learned was Daleth, door. That is what the alphabet becomes, a doorway into the Kabbalistic layer of the Golden Dawn. On one side, you have names you can pronounce. On the other, you have names you can read as formulas. Letters, numbers, meanings, relationships, paths, forces. The difference is enormous. The beginner vibrates the name. The trained magician knows what is being vibrated. And eventually, the letters themselves become enough to call up the entire structure. One symbol, one number, one path, one current. This is why the Golden Dawn tells the neophyte to learn them before the deeper work begins. Because the Tree of Life contains 10 Sephiroth. But between those 10 Sephiroth run 22 paths. 22 paths, 22 Hebrew letters. The alphabet you have just learned is about to become a map of movement through the tree. And once the letters are placed upon that tree, the elements return, the planets return, the zodiac returns. Everything we have learned so far returns. But this time, it returns as one system. That is part 6, the Tree of Life, the structure that reveals why the first knowledge lecture taught you all of this in the first place. And if this knowledge lecture series is making you want to go deeper into the actual practice of Golden Dawn magic, I want to invite you to join me inside the MageSpace Golden Dawn Magic course. The course gives you guided video versions of the rituals, so you don't have to wait until you have memorized every word, divine name, movement, and correspondence before you begin practicing. You can start doing the work now. Then as you continue through lessons like these, everything begins connecting. The symbols become more meaningful. The divine names become more meaningful. The movements become more meaningful. And gradually, something that once looked like an incredibly complicated collection of correspondences begins to reveal itself as a living system. If you're ready to go beyond reading about ceremonial magic and actually begin practicing it, click the link below and join me inside the MageSpace Golden Dawn Magic course. I'll see you inside.